I told off my werewolf neighbor. Dear Scary Stories NYC, this is not one of those stories about whether or not my neighbor is a werewolf. I've known from the start that he is. I don't care so much about that part though, because I'm not prejudiced about different kinds of people. Lord knows I'm weird myself. No, my problem with this werewolf is that he's a very bad neighbor, plain and simple. He's evil though, so of course that means he's also well connected in high places too. Nobody's gonna do anything about this jerk, and he's messing up the lives of my family and our pets. I am not accusing him of eating our dogs and cats or anything, at least not so far. He does deliberately frighten them and throw things at them, and I do wish he'd stop that. However, if you're gonna let your cats out, you're also gonna have to accept that sometimes things will happen. He tells me to keep them inside if I want them safe, and on that subject I don't really think he's all that wrong. He's just a bad choice to live next to a house with 3 tomcats and a dog in it. The rest of the things he's done cross over the line though, in my opinion. Let's see if you agree or not. I used to let my kids play in our backyard, but no longer. That creepy neighbor likes to come up to the fence in werewolf form and make these horrible guttural noises. I don't even know what you would call them. They aren't barks exactly, but I guess that's what I'll call them. I mean, it's not howling either, but he makes this sort of repellent vocalization that hurts our ears. The kids come running inside frightened, holding their ears. It's a mess. Now they just play inside the house, or if I have time, I drive them to the park. It stinks because we have a nice backyard and we can't use it any longer. I find parts of his kills all over our property, and I have to clean them up. It's disgusting, it really is. I'm not going to get into detail, but it's nauseating. I had the police out, but they all seemed to be his drinking buddies. They all stood around making fun of me for complaining about him, and when I told them he was a werewolf, they all started laughing. The werewolf laughed loudest of all, that jerk. When the cops finally left, he told me that he wasn't a werewolf, but his wife was. I didn't believe him for 1 second. His wife is even shorter than I am, but that werewolf is 2 heads or 3 taller than me. Still, he insisted that his wife was the bear-sized wolf monster, and the cops told me they were too scared of the missus to try to put handcuffs on her. They laughed so hard when they talked about it that I couldn't tell if it was all a joke to them or if they really meant anything they said. All I know is that the more upset they saw me get about the situation, the funnier it was to those cops. One of the cops has a brother-in-law in real estate, and he says he could find me a nice house in another part of the state if I don't like living next to a werewolf woman. Well, I don't want to live next to a werewolf woman, man, or anything else. And I was here first. Okay, big update. I finally had enough. I got awakened when the stupid werewolf was howling outside my window at 3 a.m. This time I went down to confront that big bullying jerk of a neighbor. When I got downstairs and out my back door, he stopped mid-howl and stood up to stare at me. I marched right out into the driveway where he was standing and I told him off. I just started listing all the things I was fed up with about this guy and what a horrible neighbor he was. I was really building up a head of steam when all of a sudden I glanced over toward our neighbor's house, and there he was, the neighbor, in human form. So who was I lecturing and shouting at? The creepy neighbor man called out to me in the night. "You've met my wife Lurleen, haven't you?" Lurleen, the wolf woman, looked down at me, and she bared her dog fangs, then growled. She drooled out of her mouth, and it landed on my forehead. I backed up a few steps. At first Lurleen stood still, growling, sizing me up, but allowing me to back away. Then, suddenly, she lurched forward, snapping at my face and making just the tiniest of cuts right on the very end of my nose. The dog woman lurched back away from me, Somehow her husband had gotten there in time to prevent her from eating my face off. Now, Lurleen, you don't want to be eating up our neighbors, that ain't polite. Turning to me, he apologized for Lurleen's howling, but he told me there wasn't much of anything he was going to be able to do about it. Well, I would like to say the situation is improved, but I still live next to a werewolf and I still don't feel that my family are safe. I am on better terms with the husband now, and he sometimes will let me know when Lurleen is having an extra cranky day so that I know to lock the doors and windows. Now that I understand he's almost as afraid of his wife as I am, it's harder to hold a grudge against him. It doesn't solve anything, though. It doesn't make my family safe. I have tried to talk to Lurleen, but she is not a very reasonable person. Now I understand why the police are scared of her, to be honest. I have been talking to the brother-in-law of that one cop, but so far there are no houses we can afford to move to. It feels like I'm raising my kids in a prison cell, and doesn't feel fair to them either. All that's happened is that now I understand how truly horrible our situation is. Ever since I told off my werewolf neighbor.
If you want a coloring book full of monster rusty light, then give this a look. It'll give you a fright, right? Scary stories, coloring book, werewolf coloring book. And just to make your mind explode, it's a digital download. All it costs is $2.09, and then you will be feeling fine. Coloring monsters today, hey, it's a coloring book, hooray. Okay, link is in the description.
I saw a dogman run through a wall of fire. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I saw the dogman one time when I was a teenager back in the 1990s in Wisconsin. This happened really close to my family's home, so I don't want to say exactly where, but it's a really nice neighborhood cut out of the woods in the northern part of the state. Most of the kids from my generation were cool, but there was one family with a troubled son. He was a firebug, and he kept getting in trouble for it. He was into setting fires and running away, hoping they would spread before anyone noticed. He was also into fireworks and later severely injured himself in a fireworks accident that stopped his arson spree. When this happened, a lot of us knew it had to be him, but there was no proof yet. This was early on in his career of screwing things up for himself and everyone around him. But anyway, that guy isn't really who this story is about. This is about the Dogman, because I saw him do something that was worthy of the circus, I really did. So it all started when my sister came home screaming that there was a fire in the lot down a block and a half from us. It was just an overgrown place where there used to be a house before I was born. The one side of the lot faced the sidewalk, and in the back it led off into the woods. If that fire moved north or south, it was going to take houses with it. If it moved west, it could take the entire forest and all our houses, the entire town. So the neighborhood was out with a bucket brigade going even before the firemen showed up. The firemen told us to wet the trees and the grass in the front while they worked in the back to block the fire from heading into the forest. During this point in the drama, there was a wall of flames engulfing the lot from left to right, and it was a pretty intense moment in time, wondering what was going to happen next. I remember guessing that we might get it out before dinner time, but then again, we might lose our house by the morning. A lot depended on luck and which way the wind decided to blow. But none of us, no matter how wild our guesses were about what was about to happen, none of us guessed at all that a wolf man would come running out of the woods at us. Now, I probably should reiterate there was no forest fire in that forest. The woods were not on fire, only this lot in front of the woods was. So I don't know what this creature was running from, but it wasn't a fire. In fact, he was running toward the fire. And by this creature, I am of course referring to the North American Midwestern Dogman. The day that it happened, my sister called it a werewolf, but she doesn't know the first thing about cryptids. She figured it was someone who lived in the town, trying to get home before the fire spread to their property. I don't personally think the presence of that creature had anything at all to do with the fire. I think the fire was just an obstacle in its way. Wherever it was going, it was beyond that fire. But before we saw it, we heard the firemen begin to yell. The creature barged through their ranks, running nimbly between the firemen, and leaping under or over their hose. I forget the details. Once it was past the firemen, though, we could see it with our own eyes, through the fire. This was what I now understand to be your typical upright werewolf-type wolfman dogman. It was not an upright walking canine. It was very humanoid, but furry all over. I don't recall it wearing any clothing. It was just a wolfman running at an amazing speed. Yes, it did have dog ears that were up on top of its head like Batman, and it had a dog snout. I don't recall if the eyes were glowing, but this was daytime, not night. It was running the way a man would run, but much faster than even an Olympic decathlon champ. The creature never seemed to register any of us, at least it never seemed to turn and look directly at any of us. It had its eyes locked on something off in the distance directly in front of it, and it did not divert its gaze for even 1 second. People dove out of the way, left and right, as the wolfman burst through the wall of flames, catching fire in places himself but never slowing down. As we turned to watch him run across a street and through someone's backyard, off into the distance, his sheer speed was snuffing the flames out on his fur as he ran. I can't really put an estimate on what speed he was going, but I would say it was faster than I'd ever seen any creature that large moving along. It could run as fast as a four-legged creature, like a pony or something. Later on, one of the firemen told us that the dogman, or whatever it was, had helped them out by running through the center of the flames the way he did. The suction created by his great speed took about 15% of the fire out of action in seconds and separated it into two smaller fires which were easier for the firemen to get under control. To that fireman, the dogman was a guardian angel who had been sent to help them put that fire out. I wonder if the dogman even knew what it was doing, though. Was it there to perform a heroic act? Or was that fire just in between where it was and where it wanted to go? Was the dogman in fact a hero? Or was the dogman just a random weird cryptid that we all witnessed racing by at almost the speed of sound? I don't suppose we will ever really know the answer to that question.
Find that link in the description, honey.
The girl who rode the dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I come from a northern part of Michigan which had legends and sightings of the dogman when I was a kid. But for a few winters in a row, we also saw a girl who was hanging out with the dogman, even riding it, like it was her pony or something. I don't remember exactly when this started because I was very young at the time, but it was in the first few years of this century. We have a lot of stories about the dogman up in that part of the world, and they are not all stories about upright walking creatures. We also have sightings of oversized wolves and canines that disappear when people try to track them. It is possible that this girl and her wolf were something supernatural or paranormal. At least that's what I was thinking before I actually had my own sighting, which I will get to in a little while. Two of my neighbors had seen it, one of my cousins, one classmate at school, and even my father claimed to have glimpsed one while he was driving. So there was a general consensus at that time that we must have had a pack of very large wolves living nearby. Initially everybody thought it was just that, an out-of-place pack of animals wandering down from up north. But then people started to see this girl riding the back of one of these large wolves. The descriptions I heard of the girl from adult neighbors were very verbose and flowery. These people were so amazed at what they saw that they sort of waxed poetic about it and gave me this impression that they had seen like Sheena, Queen of the Jungle or something. A long-haired blonde woman with a beautiful face riding the back of a wild wolf. I was visualizing a stunning cave woman, you know? I figured she was wearing an animal pelt or something like that. So I didn't actually see her until the flap was pretty much over. The sighting I had was either the last one or one of the last ones of the girl riding the wolf. I saw her behind my school when I was walking home after detention one afternoon. I forgot to mention that I was a disobedient kid, but I was. If I hadn't been in detention though, I wouldn't have been there to see what I saw. So, like I said, it was a later afternoon and I was walking home behind the school in the woods where there's a shortcut toward my neighborhood. When I saw her, it was like the entire atmosphere changed. Things smelled different when she was there, and the air tasted and felt thicker somehow. Everything seemed more real and brighter than before, and a shaft of light cut through the tree canopy overhead to illuminate this girl. She was beautiful, all right, as I had been told. She was not some fairy princess, though, and she was not a cave woman. She was wearing some kind of modern-looking yellow hooded jacket or hoodie of some sort. It was definitely store-bought, which meant she was not a cave girl, and she was not a space alien. If she was from another dimension, it was a dimension with ladies' garment stores. I ducked behind the bush and I watched her ride the wolf, who seemed to be smelling the ground and looking for something. This girl was wearing blue jeans and seemed to be a normal suburban girl, but I didn't recognize her. In fact, nobody who had ever spoken about seeing her had said they recognized her, and everybody knew everybody in that town. They still do to this day. So where did that blonde girl come from? How did she make friends with that big old Dogman? And where did she go to? Because I'm pretty sure nobody ever talked about seeing her ever again. Not in our area, anyway. Please welcome our EP, Catherine Hamilton. Her last name reminds me of that Broadway play Spamilton. Wait, that's not what it's called. Please welcome Catherine Hamilton to our channel memberships. She's our latest $7 member, which means she gets to see our secret uncensored stories. And there are over 25 hours of secret uncensored archive stories too. If you'd like to check them out for yourself, then listen to what this next guy has to say. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button. Or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.